Welcome to this week's Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin, Bob Marks, and Andy Cohen. This week's show is brought to you by Capital South, LLC, a Washington, D.C. lobby and public relations firm headed by Washington, D.C. top lobbyist Marty Irby. For more information, call or text 202-821-5686.
Once again, that number is
202-821-5686.
Capital South, LLC, Marty Irby.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show is the #1 harness racing podcast in North America. We have sponsorships and advertising spots available. For more information, email rrtrotten@outlook.com or visit ustrots.com. The statements and opinions of our guests are their personal opinions and beliefs, and it does not necessarily represent the opinions of the Harness Racing Alumni Show or of its host.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
Joining us this week is Standardbred breeder and owner, Don Tiger. Don, welcome back to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Great to be back with you, Freddie. It's an exciting week. It's Meadowlands Pace weekend. The entries are out. It's a nice field of horses, top to bottom, with the Pace. Should be a very exciting race. Some great undercard races. I always like this time of year. I know Hambletonian Day seems to always be the big fan favorite day and maybe the featured day for the Meadowlands. But for some reason, I've always believed Pace night. It just gets the most excitement for me. So great week ahead of us in harness racing for sure.
Well, yeah, I also see that Charlie May's in the Houghton this year.
Yeah, defending champion. We're back up there. It's a tough division. I mean, those horses exchange blows, but we did get a cozy inside post. He's had some very bad luck at the draw gate, so racing gods have helped us out this week. We got a good 2-hole, so we'll see what happens. Like I said, very interchangeable group of horses. They exchange blows with each other, but I think he's going to be okay in there. Yeah.
Well, Don, let's talk about Charlie May and the continuing lawsuit there. Your team just had another setback in the legal litigation on Charlie over the 2021 Meadowlands Pace. Okay, what's going on there, and what's your next move?
Yeah, as you know, I'm very transparent. I told you all along we're going to keep you updated from blow by blow, and you'll have to listen to this whole scenario here because it's important to see everything from top to bottom to give yourselves a big depiction. And I'll try to stay focused, but I'll have to bounce back and forth with where we were, where we're at, and where we're going. But to frame this up again, July 17th, 2021, we were disqualified from the Meadowlands Pace. We appealed that. New Jersey Racing Commission accepted appeal. We took it to an administrative law court. Evidence was provided on both sides, and we won in that court, which was we were probably 50-1 to win that. We came up and we knocked that out of the park. We then went to the New Jersey Racing Commission to affirm or reject that decision, which they rejected, which then kicked us to what we had to do is we had to go appeal to an appellate court, basically New Jersey Appellate Court, which again is tied in with the AG's office, and they looked at this, the ruling by Barron, and we've been waiting now for this almost a year. I think September is when all that stuff was submitted, so we were about 10 months in on it, and we felt very strongly that we were going to win the case, hands down. We probably were maybe 1-5 favorite to win the appeal process. So I got a call the other day from my mother. My aunt has been hospice care, and within seconds of that call, I knew my aunt had passed away. I prefaced that because when my attorney called me out of the blue a couple days before the 4th of July, either the 2nd or the 3rd, I'm not sure, I was kind of inundated, but within a second, I knew something wasn't right because he's like, I have bad news. As soon as I knew that, he didn't have to say anything more. But he told me that we did end up losing in the appellate division, which initial feelings for myself were like, oh, my God, I can't believe this. I'm surprised. It was shocking. And I kind of rushed off the phone with my head legal counsel. I just said, well, I got to go, worry about this later or whatever. So kind of went on to my own day, thought about it a little bit, was kind of shell-shocked. But, again, I was inundated. I had other things I was diving into. But as the day went on and I got back in touch with my counsel, co-counsel, folks that have been working, I find out how positive that was. And I know that sounds very odd to hear, hey, you hit a setback or got struck down, but there's two main facets of why that's so positive. The main one is when we started this process, we were a very big long shot to win in the administrative law case, and I still have to give Judge Andrew Barron all the credit. He looked at all the evidence independently and ruled in our favor in an office that he represents, which is unheard of, and it was a very strong opinion that he wrote, one of the strongest ever, and I believe maybe one of the few cases in actually a process where someone had disputed a race result that got overturned. So, like, that was massive that he did that. But my attorney told me the big thing that we have to worry about is if we win in the appellate court, that we probably would have a harder time in the state Supreme Court as a defendant, meaning like the New Jersey Racing Commission, if we would have won the appeal, they would have had to appeal to the state Supreme Court. Well, now flipping roles, we're going to be appealing to the state Supreme Court, which gives us on the offensive, which in this case, as you know, in sports, when you're on the offensive, when you got the football, like in the Super Bowl, like Kansas City did, you got a chance to go right down the field and win the game. The ball's in your court. And with all the evidence that we have that wasn't even submitted in the original administrative law hearing, since then, you have to remember, I know we've been very vocal about this, but the March 2020 indictments in the horse racing industry, and again, I don't know the exact number, I think 28, 30 people got indicted and convicted. I think maybe it was 32 people got indicted, 30 convictions. There was a few that got tossed out, including Rebecca Lynx. Whatever during that time frame, every time one of those cases finish, a lot of that documentation gets released to the public on Pacer. I have not seen it, I'll be honest, I have not. But the paralegals and the legal team have told me that in simplistic terms, there is impropriety shown from people directly working at the New Jersey Racing Commission or closely related to the New Jersey Racing Commission. So now, because we are going to appeal to the state Supreme Court as plaintiffs or people that are bringing the case, we're able to provide a lot of this evidence into the hearing, which is even going to strengthen my case further. So it's like a game of chess is the easiest way to describe this to you. Is sometimes you sacrifice your queen in order to get to the king. And I'm not an attorney. I don't even want to say their strategy. I can tell you a few things. There is more people getting added to my legal team through this, which that's one phase of it. So the one phase is that my attorneys are excited about is that they are now going to be on the offensive, and we're going to be able to provide more of this information, which will solidify my case. And so that's exciting. But the second part of that is a very big ruling came down on June 28th that basically the Supreme Court struck down the Chevron, I don't even know what you call it, doctrine or something like that. It was a landmark decision that was made in 1984, which basically, I don't know all the X's and O's, and I'm not going to get into that because I would be strategically wrong. But what I can tell you is my legal counsel likes it because it's basically they're saying, federal courts and folks that, were ruling on ambiguous items, that's going to get kicked back to the courts that actually listened to the evidence and adjudicated it. And it also is taking power away from these agencies. So they're extremely excited about that ruling because they say that gives us some massive leverage for everything we're doing. And how that'll shake out, I don't know. But with those two things at play, that we get to be on the offensive, and we also had the Supreme Court ruling that took away the 1984 ruling, is unprecedented, and it's going to allow us a lot of leverage. And that's one of the reasons we're adding some more people to the team, some experts that have that. So it's exciting. It's like playing chess and poker. And, you've poked me about this a couple times. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Or, is this, and the Justified case took about 6 years. This might take equally the same footing or longer. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, and frankly, I've stated this before, I'm on a contingency. So, to keep the listening audience know, I'm not paying anything, and these attorneys obviously are pursuing this on their own dollar because they believe that there's a reward at the end of the rainbow. I'm not paying filing fees. I'm not paying anything. So they obviously feel it's a very strong case. And don't forget indirectly, too, I still have the 1983 claim that is open. And they even suggested that there might be additional filings that we might file on my behalf and all that good stuff. So, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't know all these X's and O's. But the camp is real positive. So, I don't know whether it's, divine intervention, good timing, or what, but between the Supreme Court ruling and the fact that we get to go on the offensive makes it great. And the easiest way it was kind of described to me is we had a nice hand in the poker game. We're playing Texas Hold'em, and the flop came out, and it was perfect for us. But the turn card wasn't so good, and now we're just waiting for that river. And that last card, I think, is going to be the one that we want to turn over. Believe me, I'm not naive enough to know that any time that, you hit a ruling that can be negative, there's propensities that this doesn't work out or we hit more roadblocks. But according to my counsel, they're excited. The initial minute or two was awful, and I thought, man, this has been a long journey. But after that, I haven't had one negative conversation with any of my legal counsels. And like I said, they're adding more folks to the equation, which it's exciting. So, for the listening audience, I think we're just going through the process. That's all. And someone read the ruling and basically said to me, this looks like this was already done like this was already pre-written, they had their mind made up from day one. And I think, frankly, that's probably a true point to make, that it was made up from day one, meaning they're obviously going to protect, their cloth, which brings me to another big point to make. I'm very transparent when I speak to people about this, but I ran into someone over the past 6 months to a year. Honestly, I can't remember when it was. But this was a person that was extremely good, or is extremely good friends with Peter Koch, the presiding judge. And basically, we had a very constructive conversation that was like, hey, that this individual disagreed with not necessarily the judge's decision there that day, but just disagreed that there was any impropriety in the commission, that maybe they didn't look at things the right way, that, the decision was made and maybe it was wrong, but it wasn't wrong, nefarious. And maybe gave me a couple lumps about it, said, hey, maybe we treated Pete unfairly during this process. And I said, okay. I said, well, this is what I want to explain, which is the same thing I explained. It's his wife owned a staking company. Frankly, it has nothing to do with me, but he shouldn't have been adjudicating races that were stakes races that they got household income for. The judge in my case agreed. My counsel agreed. Judge Barron agreed. So, that was something he shouldn't have been doing. But regardless, so he's looking at the race that day, and under testimony said he didn't investigate Southland Gentry making a break. He didn't do it. So this person that, I was having this discussion with, I said, hey, do me a favor. Did you watch the race live? Yes. Did you watch the replay? No, I never did. I said, well, do me a favor. Watch the replay and just follow Southland Gentry. Don't follow anything else. Just glue your eyes to him the whole time, and then, you make your decision from there. Not a problem. So this person called me back and said, I apologize to you. You were right in what you're doing, and Pete's still a friend. He'll always be a friend, but he made a mistake that day, and I have a different outlook on it now. I'm only prefacing that because, again, it's not a personal thing. It's not. I mean, people make mistakes, but they didn't follow the rules and guidelines. And one of the things has always been big in this whole legal case is you have to interview drivers. Well, I have in my possession a presiding judges from another state that said, Judges School 101, you must interview drivers. If you don't get a depiction of the race. Art Gray, the expert witness, said the same thing. You have to talk to people just to get an opinion and eyes and ears. Are people going to sometimes always try to present their case? Sure. But the idea, it isn't it's trying to get information. And if you don't get information, then you can't make a logistical decision. And truth be said, in the Meadowlands Pace, they could have called any of the 10 drivers in the race, and any of the 10 drivers would have clued them in more for the PJ and the other judges to take a look into Southwind Gentry, to see that he made a break, to see that he was the culprit. And 6 minutes, they just rushed the decision. They made the wrong decision. And in hindsight, they know it, and everybody knows it. And this is one of the few cases that it'll be case law forever of Judge Barron's. But in addition, we're going to keep working to try to get it overturned. Because I try to tell people, like, oh, are you disappointed with the result, with the appeal? No. Are you disappointed that day? Yes. Can we ever get that day back? We can't. It's 3 years. Like the exciting part about these guys this weekend, Nijinsky, Captain's Quarters, Captain Albano, all these horses, they're all racing for their glory. And if something like this happened again, we don't want them to get, we want it to be adjudicated properly. That's why they have instant replay. And that's why you get into these basketball, hockey, and football, and baseball games. They take an hour, the last 10 minutes or last 5 minutes, because they make sure that they're getting things right. They're making sure that they have people on the field. They're making sure that you're viewing all the, and that's the bylaws of U.S. Trotting, to exhaust any and all measures as judges. That's why we won, and that's why I think we're going to win when it's all said and done.
Yeah, well, what I'm going to throw in here, Don, is like when you watch the thoroughbred races and they have an inquiry, you always see them talking to the jockeys.
Always.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting, because now that we're getting deeper into this, it's not a violation of trust. I've always kind of kept my head down and said, hey, these judges that are racetrack judges that I know, because I know a lot of them personally too, and I've run into them, they all tell me the same thing, is like, our job is to ask questions, and to talk to people. Our job is to look at the replay angles. Like, I've been out at county fairs, and I've seen 3 judges sit there and take 5, 10, 12 minutes. They'll call over to the paddock. They'll get a walkie-talkies. I mean, we're doing walkie-talkies, and it's only a $2,000 purse, and it's taking 10 or 15 minutes. Now, granted, nobody wants it to take time like that, but you have to look at all the people that are involved. I'm a blessed man. My horse has done well. We've made money. I'm going to get out of the industry in the black. I mean, I'm one of the few people, so you can't feel bad for me. And you look at the big picture, but you got to feel bad for the Steve Carters, the Brett Millers, the other people in the race, people that might have breeding, that, might have a sister to Charlie May or something. I mean, whatever. I mean, there's so many other people that are affected by that takedown. The betting public, I can't tell you how many. There was a guy that pulled a ticket out to me one day and showed me his ticket and said, hey, I just want to show you, I should have won this bet. And I said, yeah, I feel bad for you. Yeah, I think he had like a $5 exacta, which I'm sure was paying him $200-300. So there were so many people, and actually that was Judge Barron's big thing is yes, was I affected? Yes, with Steve Carter, but we affected the wagering public of the New Jersey residents, and we failed to protect them. That's really what happened that day. Whether you agree with the decision or not, it doesn't matter. We didn't protect the people. And frankly, had they talked to the drivers and they still made the decision they did, I wouldn't have a leg to stand on, and I would be disappointed. But it's like, hey, they exhausted any and all means. They didn't. And that's why we won in a court of law, because the judges didn't exhaust any and all means that day. They made a quick decision. In 6 minutes, they didn't investigate the culprit. And if they would have, even with more detail. What's interesting is, if you watch the live feed, David Brower and David Little are both saying the judges are going to have to see whether Southwind Gentry interfered with Charlie May. They brought it right up on the feed, and the judges didn't look into it. I mean, again, it was a rushed decision, a rushed to judgment, but it would have all been taken care of with a couple phone calls to the paddock just to ask what happened. And especially a race of that magnitude, to not do that. And like I said, this evidence from this other presiding judge in a neighboring state, if we have to, depose him, put him on a stand, whatever, and get his statement, I mean, we'll probably do that at the state Supreme Court level because, and I think I don't know all this stuff with the Chevron thing, but again, what it's basically saying is you got to go back to rely on the lower courts and the people that are making decisions that heard the testimony, not just somebody that wants to apply law or something that they don't understand the full capabilities of. But again, that's out of my pay grade, my pay scope. But I mean, I think it's exciting still, and I think that we're setting with the right set of cards and on a chessboard. I think we've got our knight positioned very well, and sometimes you got to sacrifice your queen to get the king.
Hey, Don, now before I close the show out, tell us about your 1983 cases. Explain to our audience what a 1983 case is.
Yeah, so I have to be delicate with that because one of the things is I did call my counsel. I said, hey, listen, I'm coming on to talk again on Fred's show, which I have. I've always been good. And I just said, hey, what can I talk about, what I can't talk about? Well, again, I've got a lot of disclosures signed with them because they don't want me to shoot them in the foot because they're footing the bill for this stuff. And they're obviously, the whole job is for them to get, a settlement to pay their fees. No one works for free. But what a 1983 claim is basically that there was improprieties by people in positions of strength where they misrepresented their positions. And that 1983 claim was filed against Judith Nason, who has since retired and no longer the director of the New Jersey Racing Commission, and John Tomasello, who was the deputy director. So, our stance is that they misabused power of their position against me. And it's a pretty clean claim. That's pretty much all I can say about it. But again, earlier I talked about that there's evidence out there. I can't, I'm being truthful. I don't even know exactly what it is, but these things that have been researched, whether they're testimony in the other cases that are all part of it, I mean, it's all of record and they have it. And again, there's missteps there. So will that be compounded and show that they abused their power of their positions? That's what it'll be brought about, and that's basically what a 1983 claim is.
Yeah, thank you, Don. Don, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week.
No problem. It's great to be on the show. Like I said, exciting racing this weekend. I think it's going to be a great Meadowlands Pace. I think it's a stacked field, and it's always a fun race because everybody's trying to win the North American Cup, the Meadowlands Pace, the Breeders' Crowns, and trotters are great, filly pacers are great, but our sport's really been focused on 3-year-old male pacers, and they've always been kind of the forefront. And we've got a couple good ones. There's an undefeated horse entering the race. So very exciting. So, I mean, it's going to be some great racing. So I hope everybody tunes in on Saturday, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. And now over to Andy for this week's Keeping Pace update.
Thanks, Fred. Yeah, I'm going to follow up in the Pollock Report column for next Monday on that Fifth Circuit, that federal appeals court decision that upheld parts of HISA, struck down one critical part of HISA, and really has caused a lot of confusion about what happens next in states like Texas and Louisiana. So it's stuff that harness folks are going to want to be aware of as we get closer and closer to some sort of resolution of this federal law. So that's it for next Monday, and back to you, Fred.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show is the #1 harness racing podcast in North America and is listened to worldwide on multiple platforms, including Spreaker, iHeartRadio, USTrots.com, HarnessLink, Google Podcasts, and many others. To our audience, thanks for listening, and please join us again next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show